Okay, afternoon everyone. We're going to make a start, so I'll just ask one or two to take the seat. We've got a few coming in at the back. I'll just give them a minute as well, and then we will be starting. Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much indeed for coming along here this afternoon. What you are coming along to is something unique for SportAccord. This is a first of, and I think in itself that represents quite a big step forward in terms of appreciation of the importance of issues of health and well-being within sport on all sides of this debate. So that in itself is a great way to start this event. And I would just like to say, first of all, a big thanks to our co-chairs who are both with us, and you will be hearing from both. So to Dr. Margot Mountjoy, you will know, but is chair of the ASREF Medical and Scientific Consultative Group and the IOC Medical and Scientific Commission, and Professor Fabio Pigozzi. Fabio, thank you very much indeed. Where is he there? Coming in there. Fabio is the president of the International Federation of Sports Medicine and a member of the IOC Medical and Scientific Commission. And as I say, we will hear from both Fabio and Margot in due course. They have pulled many of you here together to raise the profile of, as I say, of health within sport, the power of sport, the power to change, and the key message that a healthy sport is a healthy business. And that is a message that needs to be transferred across IFs, across to sponsors, across to everyone who has an interest in their sport and in healthy living. So to better express that, I'm delighted to say that Charmaine is with us. Charmaine Crooks, 5-time Olympian, a silver medalist. She has a CV as long as your arm. I think you will know Charmaine very well in any case. So Charmaine, could I ask you to set the scene really for our session this afternoon? Thank you. Go for it.
Thank you very much, and what a pleasure to be here at this very first Health Accord. And to David's point, and thank you, David, for all the work that you've been doing over the past few days, and to be here on this really historic moment and to be part of Health Accord, because as you said, David, this is really the root of the sport is the athlete. The Olympians, the Paralympians, and all the athletes who have been on this journey in sport, and how the health and welfare of perhaps the most valuable asset in sport, the athletes, how critical that is. And to have Health Accord with Margot and Fabio helping to launch this very important initiative with the help of SportAccord, with the support of the IFs and the other athletes that you'll hear from in a moment, is a really momentous occasion. So my scene setting today is really to set the course for what you'll hear over this session, and to really look at that journey from play to podium. And really, as a former athlete, it is not a straight line. There are years, as many of you know, of dedication and hard work for this long haul of sport, from a young person to perhaps in many cases mature athletes, and the effects that that has on your body, mind, and soul with no guarantee of success. Now, this quote here, I'm starting here, and if you could just read that out loud. Olympism is about exalting and combining in a balanced whole the qualities of mind, body, and will. How appropriate that this was said many, many, many years ago by the founder of the Olympic movement, Baron Pierre de Coubertin. And that was really, I believe, a precursor of what we still have today, that blending of the mind, body, and soul as athletes take their complex journey, and really about encompassing the whole athlete, our minds, our body, and our souls, blending as one to be able to bring the performances to the world and hopefully to leave our sport better than we started. I'm going to take a look at 3 areas. The first area is looking at talent. how can we possibly predict the next Phelps, the next Williams, the next Bolt, the next Tegla, in terms of looking at the next generation or the next athletes who are going to stand on these podiums. So when we see the young kids running around the fields and we say, that looks like a pretty interesting looking athlete, or maybe they have a chance to be a future high performance athlete. We look at that and we try to measure that, and many of us in the IFs are measuring that and helping to validate if they have truly found that next one. And finding the next one really takes an increasingly reliable methodologies that are being used now. And these technologies are being used to predict who might be the next one on the podium. And many factors go into that, big and small. But also look at masters athletes. Who could ever tell that there would be a 100-year-old sprinter, right? Or there'd be athletes still in their 80s, still performing at a strong level. This continuum of identifying who is going to be on that podium and who is going to be the next star is something that continues to use a variety of applications and other natural factors to be able to find the next generation. I put 4 different areas that we do look at and explore. Of course, universality is at the core, and IFs know this quite well as you try to build your sport and look to that next generation. And you're covering all different regions and genders, and developing this particular area, universality in sport, is very important, and looking at what are some of the universal things that we can be connected with when it comes to looking at the well-being of our athletes. Level playing field, the screening of athletes to discover underlying concerns and causes is becoming increasingly more important, but not everywhere around the world has that access to these tools to be able to measure the underlying health of athletes, but certainly there are a lot of organizations that are doing that more and more. And some of these basic needs that some of these countries have, from the sport perspective might be happening, but there sometimes are more pressing needs than just the health of the athletes. It's the health of the country. But athletes can certainly be role models for getting more involved and to promoting health as one of their local fundamental values. And then we look at access, the role of the coach, the role of associations to provide information to athletes about health and wellness. That's very ongoing. And lastly, the affordability. Medical care is not always available for all the athletes. So we're going to hear a lot of these themes come through in the next other presentations. I go now to training. As a high-performance athlete, when I was running back in the 80s and up to the mid-90s, I didn't have a lot of tools in my particular toolbox to help me with training, but I was very fortunate to have a coach, Dr. Doug Clement, who was a former athlete and an award-winning sport medicine doctor many of you might have heard of. But today, the athlete has so much more at their arsenal. Just a little list: chiropractors, podiatrists, nutritionists, biomechanists, osteopaths, naturopaths, team doctors, personal doctors, acupuncturists, optometrists, sleep specialists. And then there's, of course, Dr. Mom or Dr. Dad, right? So a lot of us now have so many other our team is more built around our health in many ways, and a lot of NOCs, a lot of IFs are very dedicated to that. But this all needs to be very coordinated for the best interest of athletes' performance, and making this a priority in sports, and athletes going in knowing that this priority will exist for a long time. I put 4 different areas: monitoring and measuring success. Analytics has certainly made it easier to predict performance, but we also look at wearables. Wearables are out there as well. Athletes are using this more and more. But it comes down to, how do we interpret the data? How do we make this data more robust so we can use it for our optimal performance? Nutrition, hydration, special diets. From hydration now, we're looking at from plant-based drinks to electrolytes and all of these other advances in hydration. And probably the most interesting one for me when we look at the health of the athlete, rest and recovery. Whether it's from overtraining, and looking at that from the short and long-term goals of overtraining, to things like sleep therapy. And there's sleep therapy institutes now that are helping to help athletes cope with travel schedules, and how reaction time is improved with proper rest, mood, anxiety, and being able to manage all the pressures that come with and through sport, and how sleep therapy is very, very important, an emerging trend. And of course, finally, mental health, the mind-body connection that was talked about from Baron Pierre de Coubertin, and how that now is becoming a huge focus of the health and well-being of the athlete. So where does the future go? As we track our future, we look to the new technologies that are taking place. And in some of the work that I'm doing with some of the tech companies I'm involved with, we're seeing that the VR simulation continues to be a way not just to support performance, but it also helps to enhance recovery in many ways. And mindful rooms, even in the sort of general population of health, mindful room pods are popping up all over urban centers, and athletes as well are looking for this mindful, restful rooms for concentration, for relaxation, and to be part of their recovery as well. So fan engagement, many of you may heard how some of the data from athletes are now being shared on social media. So people can follow our heart rate, and perhaps they'll be following more of our biometric data in the future. And this clearly poses a question of privacy and access and how this is shared. We look at media and sponsors, and the sports journalists of today might be sports technologists tomorrow who are also reporting on athletes' health. And how do we utilize that in a more robust way from a sponsorship and a media point of view? And the last two areas, education and research, I just want to make this argument for STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, which is such a vital area when it comes to research and education, and how critical it is for us to make sure that athletes have an opportunity to understand and to learn through STEM how they can become better performers in the future, and how they can have that as a career path as well, because, you know, having gone through the personal experience, they will be able to understand how to better integrate and to better share their knowledge of sport and science and its impact on us in the long term. And lastly, life in sport after sport. An athlete's journey from the beginning is one, again, that we hope can be stronger and have learned lessons about how to take care of ourselves in the long term. And I was pleased to see today the new World Olympians research project that's being launched. But we also know from other anecdotal research with athletes that the whole idea of detraining is very important. And we know that elite athletes, do tend to have a little bit longer lifespans. But we want to keep that going. We want to keep that attitude of a healthy, whole athlete as the focus of our attention when it comes to the health of the athlete in sport, so that we continue to draw more athletes involved, and that athletes can also be health and lifestyle role models, particularly for young women as the future moves forward and we look to the healthy, whole individual athlete as being one who is at the core of federations and of national organizations to be able to have optimal performance on and off the playing arena. Thank you so much.
Charmaine, that was great. Thank you very much indeed. Really lays us up, sets us up for where we're going to go now. I mean, we're very used to SportAccord, indeed all sports conferences, talking about high performance, about achievement. Have I pressed a button? I might have hit a button there. Someone's hit a button. And this is all about high performance and achievement in the realm of health and physical well-being, not least for athletes, and that's where we're going to start. John Lillilund is with us. John is the Secretary General of the International Floorball Federation, also a former international himself and an international coach, and is going to give us a snapshot of the way in which the Floorball Federation has embraced techniques and science, medical science, to enhance the status of athletes within the sport. John, thank you.
Well, I think the most important thing to start with is to say that the reason for this whole project we had with the injury prevention and the study made in correction to it was that at some point we started to see an advanced number of knee and ankle injuries occurring in floorball, which is a fast-paced game played on a synthetic or parquet floor indoors, where you have some contact. The contact is actually not allowed, but you have some contact in respect shoulder to shoulder. But the interesting thing was that most of the injuries actually occurred when players didn't have enough neuromuscular power in their legs to make the turn. So, for example, going in this direction and seeing the ball going there, and then going there, and then either the ankle or the knee went. So this is the basis from where we start. So the idea was actually to look upon, in a sport where there is a lot of starts and stops, there are a lot of transition from one direction to the other, to see how we could, in principle, educate the coaches. Because most of the coaches in the sport, which is only about a little bit over 30 years old, actually have been players themselves. That was also the way I actually came into to become a coach. I started playing, then suddenly the women's team didn't have a coach, and there I was. So in the mid-2005, 2004, we started, and Miss Kati Pasanen, who's been the driving motor behind, who is also now working at the Canadian, the University of Calgary, making injury prevention as a larger module, or also for basketball, I think ice hockey and some other sports. We started discussing the issue and the possibilities of what we could do and how we can look upon it. And she then actually she studied women's floorball for a few years, and she looked upon what's there, how does it work, what happens. And then she started building a neuromuscular prevention program with activation before the practices, before the matches, and the results were really, really dramatic. We could see a quite decrease of injuries very quickly. And we started then, based on that, we started first then so first the women's leagues team started taking in the prevention program, then the men's league started taking in, then there was some coaches coming from other sports who started looking upon it, and then it started rolling out from there. And we took it into we run development seminars for coaches all around the world, about 42 so far, and we took it in 2008, 2009. We started using it and giving examples of how it can help in the prevention. So one of the ideas was, of course, then for us then when looking on what is the real risk and what do you need to do, we then started also looking together with Ms. Pasanen, we started looking at the injuries and defining what kind of injuries there are, not only from an epidemiological information, but also gaining direction for injury prevention and seeing where on the fields they happen. So we follow our three major events: the World Championships for men and women, the U19 World Championships, and the top club competition in the Champions Cup. We follow the players. We started in 2012, and we follow. So when every player is injured and away for more than one period, the team has to, and the team doctor has to report what the injury was like, what kind of injury it caused, and what then happened. And based on that, the study continues still, but the first article was published in the BMG Open Sport and Exercise Medicine Journal in 2017. And it's quite interesting to see that even if you would think there was only about 21.2 injuries per 1,000 game hours on the top level. So the problem is actually not the top athletes. It's actually what was said before. It's the grassroots and the middle level athletes who maybe are not that fit, who then faces more problems. This form is a bit complicated, but it's in principle giving you a picture of like what data we are collecting. So it's pretty easy. Where did it happen? What happened? How did it happen? What was the physical part of the injury? What was the thing you were doing afterwards? And then based on that, we have been collecting this data now and putting it together. And working very closely with Ms. Pasanen, we then also started looking for the 4-step sequence of sports injury prevention research, which is the one Mechelen model, which was used in her PhD. And we think of trying to get to know what the typical injuries are, because it's much easier to go and say to a coach when you're trying to teach them, hey, look, these are the kind of things you need to be careful about, these are the things you need to avoid, and if you can't avoid them, especially one really big problem for our sport are slippery floors. If we play on older, let's say, in some parts of Europe, especially the eastern parts, there is a lot of old venues where we are playing, and there is the floor is quite slippery. So, for example, that then causes much more injuries, as such when we play there than if we play on synthetic floor, which is clean. Other problem is that since there is not enough playing space for the sport, in a lot of countries we are playing in old warehouses where the club has built their own venue. So that means that they put some kind of subflooring, maybe not even that, and then a gear floor or Taraflex carpet on the floor. And when there is dust in the building and that goes down to the floor, that causes an enormous amount of slippery. And then when you try to stop and you don't stop, and then you first glide and then it comes the complete stop and then off you go. So the first step was in the study was to one season they followed up 374 players in the women's league. They looked upon how many injuries. There was 40.3 compared to the IFF study with only 20.2 per 1,000 game hours. And 77% of the injuries were lower extremity injuries. So this was quite clear that the overall interest here is to look upon the legs and where we have most, because there are not that much physical contact to the upper body. Though the goalkeepers, which I happen to represent and still am representing, is of course the fact that we don't have shoulder and elbow and wrist problems. So then in the prevention study going forward, the typical non-contact injury situations is quick direction change, sudden stopping or cutting, and usually without any physical contact from the opponent or your own player, but that should be a little bit less normal. So what then actually was done was to build a neuromuscular prevention measures, which started up with the fact that you start from the toes and you build it up all the way up to the neck, in principle, to warm all the small neuromuscular muscles in the whole body. I'm not a doctor, so if I say any kind of term is wrong, I mean, my medical school career was quite short. So the idea is that when you do this and you teach the players to do this every time, in every practice, regardless if you are on the court or you're doing something else before the court, so it's a warm-up process. You actually are warm and the player is much more ready to go into the court when the real play or the real practice with the ball starts. And this is something, it says here 20 to 30 minutes. In principle, it has now been put to about 15 minutes. And when we start with kids that are about 8 years of age, in a few weeks they know it. And it's something which happens automatically. And you can see before the game, in for example, junior series, you can tell when you look at the warm-up, they are doing something, everybody, the same thing together, and they are standing and shooting. You know from the start which team will win, because the fact is that in the first period, the team who did the injury prevention warm-up, they will be ready. They will be physically ready also. So it's not only a question about injury prevention, it's also a question about making yourself ready to do the stuff. I had a video, but it was so big so I couldn't do it. But the main idea here is then you go through different things. You go through ankles, you go through knees, you go through hips. You do static movements and try to bring the whole body around to look upon it, to be ready to go in. I hope you will have the presentation so you can see what it was, and I can actually later, but that there wasn't enough bandwidth in the hotel to download the video or send it further. But I think the most important thing is that we do this, and which I would say is the recommendation, we do this all year around. It's not only a thing you do when you practice the sport as such, but it's also for every practice we do. And it's something which is non-negotiable. It becomes. And when we have introduced this to in the development seminars to new countries and new coaches, it's like you can see the light going up and going on, oh, that we haven't thought about. So, just a short example, the components, there are certain sport-specific running drills, there are some balance exercises, there are some lower limb plyometrics and agility things, and some strengthening exercises, which are all done at the same time. And then we build different programs in different cases for different teams. But what I would say is the most important thing, and also is that the fact we came up with was that the lower limb injury risk was reduced with 66% based on the introduction of the injury prevention. And we then also had the possibility to run this in a control group run by Ms. Pasanen. And now actually this experience is used in Calgary, University of Calgary, of building this. I think they're working with basketball at the moment of building a similar kind of setup based on this study. So the message, a neuromuscular warm-up program. It was really effective in preventing acute non-contact leg injuries. The contact ones are, of course, different. The neuromuscular warm-up training should be included in all the weekly training of all floorball players, which has been done, and we have actually then integrated it into the development seminars as a recommendation when we go out and speak to the new coaches. So I think that's all for me. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Very clear example. The proof's in the pudding, isn't it? The statistics, well, they do lie sometimes, but I think on this occasion it's quite clear they make a difference. I mean, that's about short, sharp, twist, turn sort of sport. I don't like it when you go, but we get the clear impression as to what can happen. We're now going to go to the other extreme in a way, because I want to ask Tegla to come and join me. Tegla Larupe, who you will know very well, a great marathon runner, New York Marathon winner twice, holding the world record time for the New York Marathon as well, world half marathon winner. And then we're talking to a certain extent about post-career life. Tegla is a UN ambassador, a peace and sport ambassador, and of course, famously, the chef de mission for the Olympic refugee team. So Tegla, thanks very much for joining us, and we're very keen to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I feel more nervous. This is not marathon. This is about Tegla. Well, I'm really happy to be here. I just want to thank all my friends who invited me to be in this place. My first time in the SportAccord, but I see the faces of friends and sports people. Of course, we have doctors. Thank you, Professor Yanis, my friend here. This is all about Tegla Larupe. I started running. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself.
Tegla literally burst onto the international scene with a startling win in the 1994 New York City Marathon. This was the first major victory by an African woman. After her victory in the 1994 New York City Marathon, Tegla was a marked woman, but it mattered not. By the 24-mile mark, Tegla Larupe was alone, dominating the competition, much to the delight of the Central Park crowd. During the course of her career, Tegla had won New York City twice, London, Berlin, and Rotterdam 3 times, with a world record along the way.
Tegla is on world record.
City twice, London, Berlin, and Rotterdam 3 times, with a world record along the way.
Tegla is on world record pace, a record set in London in 1984 by Ingrid Christensen of Norway.
Larupe is clearly paced by 2 men, which is not illegal in mixed-gender races. For Tegla Larupe at 1998 Rotterdam, a world record, 2 hours, 20 minutes, and 47 seconds.
Thank you. That sports bring people together, and also for health. Sports people are always healthy, and it takes people from one continent to another. For example, myself, if it was not because of sports, I would be in Africa. I would not be in this part of the world. So I can say sports is something, it's a drive, or it's a pilot to many lives. My message for peace is for everybody to love and support also, and also to discourage those who are doing wrong things. Because if we don't discourage others with a good faith, we will not have peace in the world. And let us not get tired preaching about peace. And when we talk about peace, there are so many problems, and we have to understand what causes the conflicts. So we have to address the problems so that we can have peace. Well, after my career, I decided to go and do something in our region, and because I came from a conflict area, And through sports, I was able to have a name. And here you can see the refugees athlete. I worked with the refugees athlete. Why? Because these people, I realized that they need our help. And I got all their names, working with criminals people. But for me, I understand they were not criminal people. Anybody can be a refugee. But thanks to the support of IOC and many other people, IWF, and also my country for supporting these people. When we came to Rio, it opened doors for many, many people. It was something special. It was emotion. And for me, I forgot that I was dealing with the criminal as the people talked about, but I was dealing with the people that needed my help. And it gave us sanity. Now, from refugee to what happened in our continent and the progression of marathon for men in Africa, nobody talk about women, but we talk about men. So you see why it came down. This is when Africa, or East Africa, came into the world of sports.
The Kenyan drive for athletic success began at the same Mexico Olympics where Mamo Wolde had won the marathon for Ethiopia. But in the 10,000 meters, he came up against a Kenyan named Temu.
80 yards and Temu attacking. Temu of Kenya against World Ethiopia. And Temu is going to take the gold medal. Kenya's going to get it. And World is beaten. Temu wins.
The great rivalry was born.
Today, why people, or there is what we call Africa dominating? The first point is, for me, I can say it's out. You can read the rest. It's all about hard working. It's all about educating our people. It's all about, well, we are advantage of training high altitude, but for me as an athlete, it's all about hard work, and listen to the people who talk to you. You can see the picture here. We did not have all, if I had this, let's say, scientific, whatever, but it's through listening to the coaches, through listening to yourself, and eat well. Sorry. In one of the blue t-shirt athletes, he was wearing blood and sweat. Blood and sweat is all about struggle. It's not only about Africa. It's for any individual that works hard instead of using drugs. Well, we did very well in Rio, but we came second. But there is a question whereby many, let us not cheat ourselves. I feel sad because after Rio, some of our athletes were caught in drugs. And that is not a fair game. The whole world is looking at us. Why? Because we are some use drugs. And clean athletes, nobody's protecting them. Today, we can talk about how are we going to work together. We have to have this holistic approach. When you have two legs, and when one leg is broken, you cannot stand. But we need what we call education. We need protection. We need other things that makes us together to stand for our sports today and for our people today. I can say it, the world of today, we are happy to have people like Professor Ayones, Sub-20 project. He cannot work alone. when we have people like Haile Gebrselassie who launched this project, he was a clean athlete. And together we can use such a people. Our athletes today, they are lucky because they have all these things. If I had all the support, I think maybe I would be running maybe 205 like a man. But our athletes today, they are lucky, but don't forget that we have also what we call cartels, that they are using drugs to cut shortcuts. How are we going to deal with these people? It's all up to us. Thanks to the organization led by Professor Ayanes. You can see, I don't want to explain, but our sports today, we fight doping, we will stand a good chance. We have athletes like Bekele, who was out of the competition, but through the scientific support, natural way, he came back and ran very well. We have our athlete, former world record. He was supported in a natural way, and today he's having a very good time. Well, these are our partners, and they cannot do alone. We need each other. We need to support these people so that we can make a better world for our sports today. Thank you very much.
Tegla, thank you very much indeed. Actually, don't go far because we're going to have a panel discussion now, and you are part of that. Could I ask our panelists all to come up, actually, and we'll get straight on with the next part of the session. Take a pew, wherever you wish, Ivo. I haven't been given my orders, so take a seat. We're really building on what we've been listening to over the course of the last couple of examples, case studies, and learning from the experts. The title is, what are the inside secrets to maximizing athlete performance, but also what are the ways to maximize athlete endurance, athlete health and welfare. You know, it is obviously a much more of a health picture that we're trying to create. And as we've just heard from an elite athlete, Charmaine, I want to just stay on elite for a moment. I met a few weeks ago Janica Kostelic, a 4 times alpine skiing Olympic gold medalist, Croatian, who said, elite sport, healthy, forget it. Simply not the case. Now she's retired and she's, you know, looking back on the way her life was. But actually, there's a lot of truth in that. And I wonder how you overturn that, given already what we've heard of, the monetary incentives, the glory incentives, the profile incentives.
That's a tough one. You know, first of all, athletes are naturally risk takers. So they will do anything to extend their body to stand on the podium, and they take that physical risk, the mental risk, and other things that are associated with that. That being said, there are more, the system around the athlete is stronger. There's more medical support, there's more protocols for injuries, such as concussions and other injuries and things like that. But I think that, there's one thing my coach always told me, you have to listen to your body and know your own body and understand that, you know, our body is a vehicle, it's a tool for our performance, but, you know, we have hopefully a long life after that, and hopefully some of the lessons that we learn from how to take care of ourselves and the other advances in just general lifestyle methods, that we're able to carry that through our life after sport. But I would say that there needs to be more education for athletes to understand what's going to happen to their bodies after. There's a lot of career training as how to find a job and how to integrate in society, but we're not teaching or sharing enough knowledge with athletes about how to manage our bodies that are going to take us beyond sport, and I think that's an opportunity.
Tegla used the word education quite a lot there. In your career, in your experience, that there must have been moments when you're coming to a big race and you know you've got a bit of a problem, you're going to find a way to mask it still. Did you have to do that?
For sure, but I used to listen to myself. I was thinking of longer career and say, if I run with injury, I might injure myself more. But I was lucky why I had a coach who was a very keen in supporting the athlete. He was not able to allow us to run with injury. But most of our athletes, they are being misused by the manager. Why? That manager want to have money, and therefore, if you do not have education, you can be completely destroyed. But maybe because I was a very tough person, that I was always outspoken. I say, you know what, when things doesn't work with my health is more important. But not many people like Tegla. So my advice also is that to the athletes, that they need also to listen to their body. They should not be like used as a slaves for the benefit of the others.
Right, being a strong character is important, but this is a good point to bring in Ivo Ferriani, who's the IOC member and president of the International Bobsleigh and Skeleton Federation, because Ivo, this issue about not just the athlete, it's also about the coach, and as we talk about the importance of health issues, how much more work still needs to be done in terms of coaching the coach?
You know, my philosophy is always to coaching the coaches, because when the athletes approach the sport, they are not athletes. They are kids. They are persons. They have the wish to do better. They are ignorant about all the world about sport, so they want to do well. And the only person they trust is the coach, and the coach have the capacity to induct athletes to go over their capacity sometimes, or what they think is their capacity. So teaching the coaches is important to understand that the athletes, they are not just a matter to achieve a personal goal to show that you are the best coach in the world, but to create conditions that the athletes will be a model for the other, for themselves. So the coach must be educated to educate the athletes. Therefore, you have to have people behind the coaches to educate them how to educate the athletes. Because the power to induct the athletes to do great things is huge, we have also to prevent situations where the coach abuse the athletes.
But let me ask you this, that all is obviously correct and sensible. Nonetheless, coaches often work in their own bubble, in isolation. It's not as if there is in every sport a very well-ordered structure of relationship between governing body and coach. So how do you achieve that to make sure that the coaches are getting that education and are prepared to take it?
Yeah, as a former coach and a former also director of a team, I always was careful regarding a relationship between coaches, you know, because many coaches, they are very jealous about their athletes and their work. They don't want to share anything. They stay close in their small field. That's not allowed to understand if the coach is depressive or if the coach has some disease. And when you discover that, it's too late. The only way is to create symposium, create a relation between coaches, exchange of ideas. When we say educate the coaches to share your experience. Because I like to say always, the training don't exalt the performance. Of course, it's a provocation. It's just the best training improve the performance. But you cannot be sure that you have in your hands the best coach, the best training, if you don't share with other people, you know. So therefore, it's important to create this condition to sharing and to have, let me say, controller. Controller is not like a police situation, but more working in a human character, capacity, and education. And the women in these things can be very sensitive. The women are able always to manage a situation because they are very sensitive in these things.
It's interesting, John. There is a fine line between a controller and policing, but you know we're going to talk a bit about doping as well. There's an awful policing job to be done. How heavy do you get on coaches?
Well, actually, I think it's quite interesting what you said, Ivo, because the fact is that the best coaches, regardless of what sport it is usually the ones who are open to A, share their ideas, and secondly, be listened to and look what the others are doing, because there is no coach in the world who would be that good that he would actually be able to do. But then when it comes to the controlling and policing, it's actually quite interesting, because at the moment the coach, especially what you said about coaching women, it's actually much more fun, because the thing you need to do is, the guys, you can just say, we do like this, yeah? Management by window, you either do it or off you go. But when you have to explain it, it also gives the coach quite a lot of things, how you need to think and what you need to think about it. And there I think we have a lot to learn, and especially the community of coaches, and also the interaction with the players. Because as it was said earlier, the player is the one, or the athlete is the one who knows his or her body. They know what's going on, they know what the feeling is. And the more you can include them in the process of coaching, and also then you can prevent a lot of wrongdoings, and you can also learn a lot on the same time.
There's also the notion of the entourage too, and we've heard a lot about that, and I believe the IFC has a committee dedicated to looking at the entourage. Yes, the coach is an impact, but the agents and all the other players, I guess, around the athlete, that's also very significant and really impacts the decisions that are made about the athlete, whether they should get back into the game, how they're treated, and everything else. And of course, the health can also be impacted by the decisions that are made with that entourage and the pressures that go with that.
Yeah, Matteo, you've been listening very patiently for the first few minutes. Thank you. Matteo Vitello is joining us, Business Relations Manager for Techno Gym, and also very much a sports fanatic in your own right, through MotoGP in particular. But tell us, we've heard a lot, and Charmaine set the scene in terms of technology, if you like, and the advantage that creates. For you, it's an interesting balance in a way, isn't it? Because you want to provide the best, the most modern materials which take people to the highest levels, and at the same time, the vast majority of people you do provide for are never going to reach those highest levels.
Not true. No, I would like to maybe follow up on the route of Nivo as well, because sharing is also at the beginning of our company. So basically, our company was based on providing not only the best technology to improve their performance of the athletes, but also in order to prevent injuries as well. But without the sharing, so without the knowledge of the athletes, the knowledge of the coaches, the knowledge of the teams that we have worked with since 35 years. So we started with Michael Schumacher in the 80s, 90s in the Formula One. Then now, of course, we are with the Olympic Games in 7 editions. So we collaborate with all the athletes in order to provide the best tools, the best technology possible to perform better, of course, but also to prevent injuries as much as possible, because this is key for athletes nowadays. But thanks to the technology we developed, and also in collaboration with other entities and other companies, we have the possibility to give the best tools possible to the athlete globally. So without the synergies with the athletes, we will not be able to provide what we provide now. And this is the strategy since the beginning of the company. So exchanging information, giving and taking. Without this, we will not be here at this moment.
So tell us a bit more about that exchanging of information, that communication, because as you say, you can hand over the product, it's how it's then used. And again, as we're still talking elite for the moment, we know that elite athletes will want to take it to the nth degree. I mean, naturally, that's the way to win.
Of course. No, this is everybody's goal, to be always at the limit, but also in terms of limit, we need to understand our body and how it's reacting and how it's performing. So we always have to make sure that the limit is not overpassed in order to prevent improving again. So sometimes also technology tells you when your body has to stop as well, in order to then recover and then perform even better than afterwards. Yeah. So this is the best system to work with. So with coaches, with athletes, Olympic Games athletes, we have ambassadors all over the world which we work with. Also Michael Johnson in the past as well. He has also a big nice center in the States, in Texas, where we work with. So this is the kind of collaboration that we have globally in terms of produce better tools, better equipment for our better technology for our athletes, so for end users.
Okay, let me ask you then, all of the panel really, and just sticking for perhaps the last bit on elite sport. Tegla has talked about the battle against doping, which of course we all know, we all recognise it's there, it's probably there forever. But if we come back a little bit to a much grayer area, Ivo, perhaps I'll start with you on TUEs, for example, therapeutic use exemptions. This, as we're discovering almost by the day, ever increasingly grey area, and at the core, whether some will see it as cheating, others will see it very much as the health of athletes, and it's being prepared to put the health of athletes at some level of risk. The very fact you'd have to take medicines just before you're going to compete at the highest level. Is there a way, do you think you could see a case where you say, right, let's strip all this away. We've got to have a much blacker, whiter line between what is acceptable and what isn't, for the health of athletes?
When you go over, as Matteo said, over the limit, you have to use something. If you go to use something for go over the limit, you impact extremely in your health. Maybe you have not immediate effect, but you have a long-term effect. Regarding doping, I'm absolutely clear. We have to establish the technological way to define what is the limit. Cannot be adjustable by subjective idea if you can take more of this product because you need it for your, I don't know. If you have a problem or disease, you cannot make high-level sport taking some medicament because go against the logic. Normally, if somebody have problems in some sport for incompatibility, they have to decide to step down. Sorry, it's the reality, because I don't want to make now names by the case, but you understand very clearly. So if you cannot run the marathon because you cannot breathe, go against the health.
But there's so much at stake. This is the challenge, isn't it? Tegla, and then Charmaine.
No, I agree with him that most of the people taking advantage of health, and they use medicament to cheat. If somebody is sick, why should I have to go for competition? I have to take my health to be number one. And since we have now good technology to help, I think we don't have to just take such a nonsense. We need to protect our sports.
You shouldn't have this nonsense, Charmaine.
Absolutely. Well, doping has no place in sport.
Yeah, we all recognize
no
that,
place in sport.
I'm sure.
And so I just think that, personally, of course, there are legitimate cases where someone's sick and someone has to take something, that is within the compliance guidelines, obviously. That is standard. But I think that we have to start very early with education, and so that the next generation of athletes see that there is no place for that, and that they clearly understands that sport is about rules. It's about playing by the rules. It's about creating a level playing field where if I'm standing or lining up against somebody, I know that the system is protecting me, so that the person to my left or to my right, I'm confident that I'm in a level playing field. And right now, a lot of athletes don't feel that way. So I think all the technology in the world is not going to make us better athletes. And I do think that any drug in the world may not make you a better athlete. You still have to have your mind and your sense. But as an athlete, you want to be standing on the starting line, confident in the system that's there to protect your health, that's there to protect the integrity of sport, whether it's from a branding or marketing or any other aspect of it. But at the end of the day, athletes are role models. We are role models. And if we take that responsibility, then we take that so deeply that we will not compromise our bodies, we will not compromise others around us, and we will fight for clean sport as a fight for, anti-doping. We're fighting for clean sport, and we're fighting for the future. And so.
John, and then Eva.
Yeah, I think for the future, I agree with Charmaine, the fact that if the earlier you start the education, not only of the athletes, but also of the whole entourage. I also think Ivo is right in the fact that you have to decrease the grey area, the space in the grey area, because otherwise when advancement in technology and medicine goes forward, you could otherwise, I mean, it's so difficult. The smaller the gray area is, the closer to black and white, then easier it is. Of course, it's very hard to say to someone that you can't do it because you can't breathe in when it's warm or something else. But that's the fact.
We should take away the gray area in general, I believe.
Yeah.
If it's possible. No, it's not easy to do it, but anyway,
Absolutely.
it's an ethical issue as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like Shimon said, it's something that we have to pass to the next generation as well. So it's an example we give to the population, to the people. Because anyway, we are, not myself, but anyway, athletes are role models for the future. So if we get caught once, we should pay the price in a big way to make an example to everybody.
I suppose that, Matteo, that's where I have a slight problem here, is about if you get caught once. I'm probably not even talking about being caught. You know, you're not breaking a rule, but you are clearly risking damage to you
To
as
yourself.
a human being, and how you overturn that culture is clearly a massive challenge, but surely that is one that has to be addressed at some point. Ivo?
You know, I think the cultural step we have to do to teach the athlete to accept to lose. Just one will win. And many people don't accept that. They want to go over their possibility to try to win. They don't accept to give the 100% of their capacity and accept the 100% is not allowed you to be world champion. You can be finalist,
That's right.
but not world champion. You know, it's not a blame to cannot win against Usain Bolt in 100 meter. You must accept to be, you know, how you are. The problem is the entourage also sometimes force the athletes to go over because there are economic interests, there are social interests, many other things, you know. It's important to understand the sport is a matter to test yourself in your full capacity. In the body, in your mind, in your attitude, you know, and the family, most of the time the family also, they are having complicity with this system, push you to go over. You have to accept it. We have to accept ourselves, you know, and don't try to use things can just tell me just to damage my health. Today I have a problem in my ears. I cannot go this evening in the disco and take something just to help me to go in the disco. I don't go to disco tonight because I have a problem in my ears. You know, it's clear.
Your evening's been ruined, hasn't it? but a fair point. I mean, who was it who said it's not the winning, it's the taking part? You know, we're getting back to the Olympic
Fundamentals of
ideals
sport, that's right.
from a Victorian age, and that's difficult to sort of perhaps rediscover now. But Charmaine, can I just move us on a little bit into maybe post-career world, but also the looking back thing. You gave this list of all the medical opportunities, the chiropractor, the sleep therapist, the this, that athletes do have these days, which you didn't have. Nonetheless, here we are.
We didn't have that when we were competing.
I'm not trying to suggest it was very long ago. Things have moved very fast and changed very quickly. But nonetheless, here we all are talking about how perhaps poorly looked after athletes are. So do you think it is a better world today for the athlete?
I think games have set up some very good systems. When you're at the games, you know, I remember going to back in Barcelona where we get glasses, you know, or you go to, you know, there's the different sport demonstrations and things like that, and the different medical facilities are set up at these sporting events. So that has become a very popular thing, and a lot of athletes, perhaps from countries that don't have that, going to the games, you know, that the system is really set up. But I don't want to see a day where only people who can afford to stand on podiums are standing on podiums, right? I don't think that that is all, you know, in some sports it takes a lot of resource. Some sports are, some countries, of course, it's easier to access those sports at that high level. But, you know, I don't, but I do feel that that level playing field again, it's not level for everybody. All of us don't have access to the same kind of medical facility. I mean, Tegla, you can probably speak even more to that. But there can't be a replacement for the grit and the passion of wanting to be an athlete. Again, you can have all those all that great system around you, and there's probably more. I mean, sleep therapists. Who would have thought that there was somebody who can teach you the value of getting a better night rest and the impact on reaction and anxiety and all the other things that come with that. Mental health. We didn't talk about mental health even 5 years ago, and that's now becoming a great part of the athlete, preparation as well. I think it's great. But those are also things that can help us after sport, which I think is great too.
And those are positives, Tekla. I mean, it is worth saying there are real signs of improvement in certain areas.
There is also a disadvantage in one position whereby nowadays the athletes, they have so much help on their side. And we realize that there's so much doping. Why? Because they have all these kind of people surrounding them, everybody with different ideas, advices, coach, physiotherapist, medical, whatever. Of course, the shoe company. And before, athletes, they used to run. Either I have a coach or without a coach, but I have to fight to be an important person. So in what scenario, for me, I can say those who ran, for example, people like Kipchoge Keino, they ran with their own energy. Our president, Sebastian Coe, I don't believe that he had so many people around or all medical, but he did it because he was looking to be a good model in his country. And what we have today, we have everything, but we have less and less. We don't compete. We want things for free, but we don't use our energy.
And the big entourage is not necessarily a helpful thing in terms
they
of
contribute a lot of
health.
problems that we have.
Yeah, sometimes it's quite also confusing as well, because anyway, everybody has their own idea and everybody think that their idea is the right one, of course. So we need to always make sure that we keep supporting in our own area of work, let's say. So everybody should take care of their own stuff. So what we do, of course, example from technology, I mean, we are very keen in developing new technology as well. This is where our strong part is, of course. So out of 2,000 employees around the world, we have 200 only in research and development. So this is our message, let's say, that we will not stop into the development of our own area, but of course we need to work with mental coaches, we need to work with the coaches, we need to work with physiotherapy. So everybody has to make sure to keep in their own route, to give their input, and nobody is expert in every single area. So we need to focus on what we know what to do. So.
Still a difficult channeling process, John.
Yeah, I actually think that the sport industry is creating the monster itself. Because, I mean, going back looking what I did last season, I was coaching a girls' team of U17 girls. There is a physical coach, there is a mental coach, there's a running coach, this is floorball. There is a physiotherapist, and I mean, they're 15 girls, plus a goalkeeper. And I mean, and they are not even that good. I mean, they're really good persons and brilliant human beings, but I mean, as a team, yeah, pretty okay. And at the same time, there is a lot. We have to keep in mind that there is a lot of information out on the market. There is an enormous amount of information on the internet, and the requirements of the parents for the young athletes are growing exponentially. So it's not a surprise to anyone that there is a huge demand, and the players and the parents will choose the teams and the clubs and the organizations who can provide a whole package to the athletes, regardless if they are just playing or sporting for fun, or if they have a real attempt to actually become a top elite athlete. So I think we need to keep this quite clearly in mind, that it's very important to also understand that there is an outside demand, outside the sports, which somebody has created, but this demand is growing. And I mean, now, for example, in the springtime when the season is over and players are thinking where they will be going, the parents are asking, what should we do? What kind of things do my girl need? And I have a very good example. One of my players is also a fencer who is on a European level in the European Junior Championships. And their coach came and asked that, what could we do, like, because we don't have these kind of things, what should we do in the same way?
Right, but I mean, it's fascinating because in one sense, and maybe it's from, maybe it's generational. In one sense, the idea that there are all those experts on hand is brilliant,
I think it's
isn't
great.
it?
I think some of it is good, but it's all about context, right?
Yeah.
Because I think with all those experts, it brings also an expectation that you're going to have these great results. There's still no guarantee, to your point. It's not all about winning, winning, winning. It's about playing the game and reminding parents and kids and everybody that sports should be about fun. It should be about lifetime fun, learning skills, education. Maybe they get into sports in a different way, not just on the field of play. Maybe it's other things around that we also encourage. But with all these things coming at us, but if you look at the corporate world, there's a lot. You go into organizations, they've got lifestyle centers, and they've got a lot of different things around looking at the whole employee. We're looking at the whole athlete and all those other things around us. So we're just reflecting, I believe, a lot of other areas and industries in society where everybody feels that they got to have experts in every area. But again, it comes down to how you distill it, how you consume it, and what you put out there that's best for you in the long run.
Yeah, but we've got on the clock. We've got 2 to 3 minutes, so I just want to know if anyone would like to pick the brains of any of our panelists before we move on to our next section. We've covered all bases. Okay, I think that just in time. Thanks. We will get a microphone to you because this is being filmed, and I should point out that these sessions are also going on the SportAccord website in due course. Thank you.
Thank you for the panelists. That was excellent. My question for anyone who would like to answer this is, I mean, we spoke quite a lot, or you spoke quite a lot about the issue of doping. But obviously to resolve the issue is going to take a lot more money, a lot more investment to use the best technology. Should we be thinking out of the box in terms of paying for that? Is there a role, for example, of the sponsors who will also want to have clean sport? Is there out-of-the-box ways that we can actually pay that bill? What are your views?
Got a few shaking heads in the audience here. You might have mentioned the broadcasters as well, but very important points. Who would like to? Ivo?
I can answer because I can always say I didn't understand very well the question because I'm a nerd, but anyway. I think any doping issues impact in all the sponsor, nations, federations, so on. It's not just a problem for the athletes. It's a problem for the athletes, but not just. So therefore, the investment must be shared by all the stakeholders because we have to put in place a technical system that avoid any doubt. And I'm sure there are systems able to avoid any doubt. So the politics, they have to decide to stop any doubt, and the investment, it will be automatically for all the stakeholders involved in.
No, fully agree on Ivo's point. Also, maybe, I don't know, it could be a suggestion, maybe like sharing of the sponsorship fee that we pay for various activities. Maybe, I don't know, for the Olympic Games, some of the parts could be then turned into this development of anti-doping studies. This is something that might be considered by rights holders. But
would everyone agree that putting more money in would lead to a more effective anti-doping system? Because it has always been an arms race, hasn't it? And it's always been a catch-up game.
Allocation of that.
Yeah, probably allocation as well, but I think that the Ivo's point earlier, it's black or white. As long as there is a grey area, as long as there is a possibility, as long as there is a need for an arms race, then money is not maybe the solution.
Well, and it's quite clear that there are some actors who would agree with you and some who wouldn't, which will make it very difficult to achieve, I think would be ultimately the point. But thank you for the question. Thank you very much indeed for that. Stimulating discussion and appreciated, I hope, by all of us here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
thank you.
So as we say thanks to our panel, please do, if you wouldn't mind leaving stage right, and you can leave your microphones over with our tech desk. Oh no, you need to keep yours, possibly. No, you can't take it home, Ivo. But we're going to move on to what is the second half of our afternoon here. Margot? Sorry? You're going to wrap up the session. I beg your pardon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will wrap up this session before we move on to the second part of our symposium today. Thank you to our speakers and our panelists for setting the scene and telling us about the importance of our investment in athlete health. And I will leave us with a framework, something practical that you can take home with you to your sport and in your organizations. And what we're ultimately trying to do today is to impress upon you the importance of looking after our athletes' health, because it will help not only their health, but the bottom line of your sport. Healthier athletes equals healthier sport. They will perform higher, stronger, and faster. And it's really important that we invest money not only in anti-doping, but also in athlete health. We have heard from Charmaine the experiences of her athletic career, as well as from Tegla. And we've seen what was and what is now. And what I'd like to leave you with is that what could be. What could the future look like for our athletes if they were healthier, had longer careers, and were healthier when they retired? Thank you to John and explaining to us what the science can do to prevent injuries in a sport. And to Matteo for sharing his equipment and technology with the world of sport, and Ivo from his perspective as a federation president. There are 6 key points I'm going to leave you with in promoting athlete health in the action plan. And these are the 6 points, and I'll repeat each one in sequence. First of all, to have a healthy athlete, you need a medical team with knowledge and expertise. This medical commission should have connection with your executive board, with the ability to influence the rules and regulations of your sport to improve athlete safety and health. Second of all, and I think John showed this very clearly with his work in floorball, if we don't monitor and know what the injuries and illnesses are, we have no way of telling whether our interventions are making a difference or not. So by monitoring our athletes' health, we will have a better idea of first what the problems are and whether our interventions are making a difference or not in the outcomes. And I think very importantly, the influence of rule changes to improve athlete health and safety are really important. The evidence of head and neck injuries and concussions in football players from the elbow to the head were great. And following the red card rule change, that when a red card for an elbow to the head significantly decreased head and neck injuries in football. So by having the ability to change the rule based on the evidence, we were able to make football a safer game for the athletes involved. This is one example of many where scientific evidence can influence our sport rules for safety. And this one is really important to me, and that's the knowledge translation from the science down to the coach and athletes. Publishing a paper is great because then our scientific committee can understand what we've learned. But if we do not translate that knowledge to our coaches and to our athletes, we're not finished our job. How do we best translate the science for the athletes to understand, for their parents, for the entourage, for the coach? This is really a critical part of an athlete health plan. And then we need sport-specific implementation ideas. Certainly we learned from John's experience in floorball that he focused on ankles and neuromuscular strength. I'm from swimming. We don't worry too much about the ankle, but I'm more worried about the shoulder. So we need to tailor these things to our sport-specific based on what the needs are. I'm going to leave you, however, with 3 points that are not unique to a certain sport, that affect all of our sports. And that is mental health, medication abuse, and harassment and abuse. So athlete mental health is something that we have not spent a lot of time learning about, and the International Olympic Committee is convening a consensus group to address this topic in November of this year. There's a lot of stigma for athletes, and they have barriers to receiving care. We also know that mental health negatively affects athlete performance. We need to educate our coaches on how to recognize mental health problems and give our athletes tools to cope with the stresses and anxiety of elite sport. The medication abuse is something that is a problem in many sports where team physicians and athletes abuse non-prohibited medications that can have negative health effects for our athletes, in particular pain medication, sleeping medication, and anxiolytics, so drugs that decrease anxiety. And the abuse of these sports can have negative health consequences for our athletes. And the final one with athlete health is specific, that's to all sports, is harassment and abuse or athlete safeguarding. As sport is a microcosm of society, harassment and abuse can occur within sport as well. And in collaboration with the IOC, there has been a toolkit released this year for all sports to adopt policies and procedures to safeguard our athletes against harassment and abuse from peer athletes, from coaches, from team physicians, members of the entourage. It's important that we have rules and regulations in place to protect our athletes' health. And the final key component of an athlete health program is to collaborate. We can learn from what other sports are doing. We can collaborate resources with other sports and share ideas, share resources, share expertise. And we can also share from non-sport organizations, government, non-government organizations, universities, scientists. We do not have to create it all within our sports. We can share with others. So in summary again, the 6 points for an athlete healthcare framework for you. Number 1, have a medical commission that's active and has influence at the executive level. Monitor your athlete's health. Ensure that sports science influences rule changes to improve health and safety. Translate the knowledge for your coaches and athletes. Implement injury and illness prevention programs specific to your sport. And collaborate with everyone else inside and outside of your sport to improve your athlete health. So with that, I'd like to leave with you the action button. It's now up to you to implement health and safety measures in your sport for your athletes. Thank you for your attention today and in the future for your attention to athlete health. Again, thank you to all our speakers and panelists in this session.
Margie, thank you very much indeed for the sum up there. And I think the point 6 being collaboration seems particularly appropriate as we move this session on now, because it's about really sport collaborating with the rest of the world in terms of putting sport to use, I suppose, for global health reasons. And to set the scene for us for that, I'm delighted to say that Professor Yannis Pitsiladis is with us, member of the IOC Medical and Scientific Commission and Professor of Sport and Exercise Science at the University of Brighton. Yannis, thank you very much for joining us, and I hand it over to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for that, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that was an excellent first half, and I hope the second half goes equally well. So my task in the next 10 minutes is really to try and set the scene for our next speakers. And I'm going to try and be a little bit provocative to try and get you all warmed up. And we try to do that as well leading up to the session with this particular quote that I'm sure most of you heard, which is the biggest threat to humanity is not artificial intelligence, but the starvation of physical activity. And I think if we do a good job today, I think all of you will leave this room believing that this is actually the reality. So let me set the scene for you. And our story, however, we have to go back in time. And in particular, I'd like us to go back in time to about 6 million years ago, where our common ancestor lived. Somewhere in Africa, it can be debated whereabouts in Africa, but somewhere there, and this is an artist's view of what it may look like. We know there must have been a common ancestor between ourselves and the chimpanzee because genetically we are more than 95% genetically similar, humans and the chimpanzee. Yet clearly we look so very different. We look very different as well, and you can see from the right-hand side of that slide the anatomical features that have been beautifully summarized by my friend Dan Lieberman from the University of Harvard, showing the differences between a human and the chimpanzee. And there's a whole list of them, which I won't go through them today because of time, but they very much tell us a different story between us as humans and the chimpanzee. We designed for movement, for running in particular, and the chimpanzee for other activities like jumping from branch to branch, etc. And if this next little video plays, I would like you, while watching it, to consider this is what we designed to do. Let's hope this plays.
Now the chasing hunt begins. The big bull leaves. The herd keeps on. Half an hour goes by. Karoha runs without stopping. The first hour is past. The sun is like a fire overhead. The kudu are way ahead. He must read the tracks well. Underfoot, the sand burns like a second sun. As the second hour ends, no longer does he follow the tracks. He runs where they will run. He twists back where they will twist back. He runs among the thorns to chase them out of the shade. He drives them into the open. He does not slow down. He thinks of his family, who must eat meat. After 3 hours, he is close, but cannot see them. The day reaches the hottest. This is good. The kudu's blood will soon boil. Karoha must outrun his thirst. He is testing himself. Can I do this? Run with no bow or poison. Keep chasing with no rest. Only myself and my spears. For 4 hours he runs without stopping. The one God has set aside is dead on her feet.
Okay, I'll stop at that point because you don't want to see the gory bits. But all of us in this room are designed for what we just saw there. Not only Tekla Lerupa, the great Tekla, but all of us, every single one of you in this room. So in addition to having those anatomical features I've just described, you also saw there that our ability to sweat is also vital. And as you can see here, to protect from developing heat stroke when exercising in the heat. The next big feature in our kind of evolution is about 10,000 years ago, when we started farming, which meant that we could have food more easily available to us. And there are places around the world, like very close to where Tekla lives, that look like this now, very similar to what happened or began 10,000 years ago. But by the year 2050, 90% of the population will be living in great cities. We're currently enjoying this beautiful city. But is it designed to allow us to do what our design is meant to be? And what about having to get access to food? Do we need to run for 4 hours now to collect our food and take it back home? Or can we just go here somewhere near you and eat as much as you want? And so what I've tried to show you in those first few slides is this mismatch between our bodies and the world we have created. And we have to do something about that. And what I want to stress is also the performance implications of this. Here we have the Rio Olympics. If I show you the results from Kenya, and these are all Kenyans despite the flags, these are the Ethiopian results. This is Mo Farah, also grew up in Africa. The two African athletes representing Algeria and France. And with the exception of these three Europeans here, this athlete from New Zealand, and these two Europeans from the US, you can see the picture here. And this has led many to believe, well, only certain populations are designed for running. Is this correct? Clearly not. And in this encyclopedia published by the IOC, the genetic findings are quite clear. And just because of time, it's very clear that there's no evidence of any kind of genetic superiority. All of us are 99% genetically similar to Usain Bolt. So as we've already seen the slide from Tekla, so what are the explanations for some of these successes happening? And I want to stress what she's mentioned, which is the running to school bit. And that was stressed in this paper by myself and Randy Wilbur, who published this notion of running to school. And I want to share a brief experience of a school in Kenya. This is actually the Nandi Rock. You would have heard of the Nandi tribe, which typically makes up the Kenyan team. And you can see from also this, the motto of the school, life is a struggle, and you can see me trying to get to the top of the school. You see the kids running up and running down to fetch water and typically can cover 10 to 15 kilometers a day. We have technology now to measure how active these kids are, and here you see my son wearing an accelerometer, and you can actually get very good indication of how active they are. If you compare and combine the orange and the red, you get MVPA, which stands for moderate to vigorous physical activity. And that's really the healthy exercise. So how healthy and how active are these kids? And remember, we are all designed for this. Our kids are designed for this. And if you just look at the boys there, the range is as far as 234 minutes. Look at the girls. Also in this population here, girls tend to be less active, up to 193 minutes a day. This is the activity they do, activity of lifestyle. I was quite fortunate to be involved in a very big European trial, which was evaluating the activity levels of children in Europe. So, and this data is being used as kind of a reference for European children. Guess what the 50th percentile was? And keep in mind what I showed you in Kenya. The data for boys and girls, about 40 minutes on a good day. Okay, so that is what we're comparing between the different populations, and keep in mind how we are designed. So, and I can challenge you to do this in your own respective countries. Look at your national records. And here I'll just choose the UK, where I'm based. And here we see some of the national records here from the 100 meters to the marathon. And allow me, in one sense, to say, well, okay, Mo Farah came to the UK initially from Somalia. And so if we were to remove his results, or even keep his results there, you'll see, for example, if you look at Steve Jones for the marathon, the national record in Team GB was broken over 30 years ago. Admittedly, Mo's running in the London Marathon this weekend, and maybe he breaks this record. And what I'm trying to show you here is the performance implications. The decline in physical activity is primarily responsible for the general demise in physical fitness. That is very clear. And the decline in physical fitness is having a negative effect on sporting performance. That is also very, very clear. And I gave a talk on this topic a few months ago in Greece, and I did the same analysis for the Greek marathon, both men and female. And again, those records haven't been broken for many, many years. And while this is quite, let's say, a topic of much debate, this viewpoint was recently published in the journal Lancet. And I would like to end off the setting of the scene with a conclusion from this Lancet commentary, which was to correct this mismatch between our bodies and the modern world, we need to understand our past and find ways to match our body's design to the new world we are creating in view of establishing a successful future. A future where physical activity is, like our ancestral past, a main component of our daily lives. We really can't change our design. Whatever you hear, we can't. So we have to change our environment. And I look forward to listening to our next speakers who will try and tell us a little bit of what we can do. Thank you very much.
Yanis, you said you'd be provocative, and you surely were, as a representative of the British Olympic Association in the room. Thank you very much indeed for that. I was just more thrilled to think I was 99% Usain Bolt. And the idea of getting stressed for trying to find a spot in the car park at the local supermarket seems to be put into context. Look, thank you very much indeed. Again, sets the scene just perfectly for us. So let's get a view, first of all, on what IF is doing about it, an international federation, which is one of the biggest. It's the International Ski Federation. Sarah, I'd like to ask you, Sarah Lewis, who is the Secretary General of FIS, to lay out your, effectively, a response to what Yanis has laid out for us. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going from moving in the desert to moving on the snow. A little bit similar to our current experiences, which is the last time that the winter sports family gathered. It was approximately 60 degrees colder than here in Bangkok when we were in Pyeongchang for the Olympic Winter Games a few months ago. Sport has really got a great responsibility and a huge role to play in combating the consequences of physical inactivity as a very important factor for the risk of non-communicable diseases, especially amongst youngsters. FIS has launched just about 10 years ago now an important program called Bring Children to the Snow. It's an action taken by FIS to try to really contribute to encouraging physical activity amongst youngsters. And we're really trying to use the platform that we have through high-profile competitions and well-known athletes to promote it and activities for kids. The vision of FIS is exactly as it says, for skiing and snowboarding to be the first choice of winter sport and recreational activity. We are blessed to be involved with a sport that does actually provide that platform to be able to enjoy it as part of your recreational activity, and perhaps even to link to Yanis's presentation. In fact, in some parts of the world, going to school on cross-country skis is actually an important part of transportation. To put this FIS program into context, in the mid-2000s, we were confronted with some research that was published in the European Alpine region, which said that if kids had not actually experienced and tried out snow sports by the time they were 14 years old, they were unlikely ever to do so in their lifetime. This was pretty shocking to everybody, to be honest, from a part of the world where you've not only been brought up with having skiing and snow sports as part of what you do as a child, as a family, through your school, but also it's a very important part of the gross national product of this region of the world. Tourism is the key driver, especially winter tourism, that generates more income than summer tourism. So we decided at FIS, as the largest international winter sport federation, not just to passively sit around and let the industry find ways to solve it, but to try to proactively take a step to see how we could get involved and we could help facilitate activity on the snow, basically to bring children to the snow. The recreational aspect of the sport is really also an intrinsic element of developing the competition side too. So these two elements are absolutely linked. The sport itself, the competition sport, relies very heavily on the collaboration and the support of the ski resorts, who are aiming to use this platform to promote themselves in order to drive tourism. So their motivation to invest in competition is, in fact, really for the publicity that they can get from the resort. That's just to give you a bit of context. Whoops, we've gone down one slide too far, but I'm going to move directly on to that, which is to basically to touch on another link between the competition sport and the recreational side, which is the fact that both skiing and snowboarding, and I think we can probably say the same is true of bobsleigh, Ivo, they have a certain risk of injury through accidents, and like most sports, the physical demands of trying to perform at the limits. And there's a strong link between the welfare of the athletes through developments in safety technology for competitions, for highest level competitions, and also being able to use that to improve the safety for recreational participation too. Some examples here on the screen with helmets that fortunately now a very common occurrence on the slopes. It's relatively unusual not to see kids wearing helmets, and even with adults in some countries it's also obligatory, certainly within ski schools, that kids are skiing with helmets. And the body armor that you see there, the airbags and the body protection, is becoming more and more built in actually to ski suits and to regular clothing. Within FIS, we've established an injury surveillance program that actually links rather nicely with the program that was launched this morning by the World Olympians Association, taking a survey of all athletes in order to try to look at the physical effects of highest level sport, and we're working with some of the same groups of researchers, and we'll be able to compare a lot of data and share a lot of information. But coming back, so what's going on here? Oh, we're jumping around here. Excuse me. Sorry, going backwards now. Okay, there we are. Let's do this. So coming back to our Bring Children to the Snow program, it consists of two certain sections, you can say, the so-called Snow Kids program and the World Snow Day. Snow Kids activities are going on the whole year round. They can be organised anywhere, anytime by pretty much by anybody, to be honest. And the World Snow Day is designed to be the single biggest organised activities on the snow the whole year round, taking place on the third weekend in January. Snow sports are not only fun for kids and youngsters, but they're really a great family activity, and you can do it really across generations as well. And you have also the awe factor of being outside in a beautiful natural environment, and really our motivation behind the program is to get kids off their virtual snow activities and video games, trying it out for themselves, onto the real thing, onto the snow. And hopefully they'll discover there's more fun in that. You've got some statistics here in terms of what we've been able to achieve since launching the program. The first Snow Kids activities took place in 2009, and the World Snow Day was launched in 2012. In fact, in conjunction with the closing ceremony of the first edition of the Youth Olympic Games in Innsbruck. And we've now got to the stage that there have been more than 3 million participants taking place in Snow Kids and World Snow Day activities over in more than 50 countries across 5 continents, and a lot of events there. The World Snow Day has exceeded 500 events now on 4 successive occasions, and has really become an established part of the annual program. A specific developing branding. Actually, the kids themselves have chosen here some identities for the Snow Kids characters, and we've now integrated them into different elements of the program, such as creating safety safety animation videos. For those of you who, hopefully most of you, are skiers or snowboarders, you may be confronted at the resorts with the 10 rules of skiing and snowboarding, which are reflecting how you should behave on the piste, in the different facilities in terms of skiing safely and mountain awareness. So we've developed those into animation videos using the Snow Kids characters, 11 languages, and we've got great support from the mountain resort operators to be able to provide that. The World Snow Day this year took place at the end of January. It's a great big classic weekend, third weekend in January, and I already mentioned more than 500 events taking place now. Next year, we're already lining up to try to get even more countries participating. There's also going to be a big program focusing on the Southern Hemisphere too, where there's a lot of activity. Another area where FIS is further contributing to promoting global health via physical activity is with our partner charity, who we're also pleased to see is very much involved here at SportAccord. Right to Play has 55 of its athlete ambassadors coming from snow sports, by far the biggest contributor of athlete ambassadors, and they have an extremely important mission to use the power of sport to help and to support and to empower kids in terrible parts of the world that have extremely difficult lives, in order to give them some joy and some play in their lives. Just moving on to a connection to Asia, which is very important. We've just had highly successful Olympic Winter Games in Pyeongchang, Korea, and now all paths lead to China, to Beijing 2022, and we're working together with the Chinese Ski Association, the authorities, in the next, let's say, step in the eco chain of Bring Children to the Snow, the introduction of Get Into Snow Sports through our educational platform, the FIS Academy. And the status at the moment of skiing in China doesn't really scratch the surface. The government have set themselves a target of 300 million new winter sports participants since 2016 up until the 2022 Olympic Winter Games. Now, when you consider the world market is currently 150 million skiers, that's effectively trebling it. So there's a great interest there for the industry as such, for tourism, and of course, for getting even more people active and on the snow. There's a plan to make it all happen. You can find out more on the FIS website. The FIS is trying really to promote global health on the snow and have a lot of happy kids.
Thank you, Sarah. Great. Thank you very much indeed. And I think that's a really good example that it is a win-win. So FIS can be feeling like it is leading from the front. It means more people participating in snow sports, which has to be a win-win. So now I'm going to ask now Matteo to join us again, Matteo Vitello. I was itching to talk about wellness earlier, but that's your theme, it's your thing, and it's part of what you want to talk to us about now. Over to you, Matteo.
Yes, hi everybody. Well, first of all, I would like to just thanks Margot, because anyway, she's the one that kindly arranged everything, and she kindly invited us to this special event, and for us it's a true honor to be here. So thank you so much, Margot. So I just wanted to introduce to you, maybe some of you don't know who Technogym is. So the argument we will speak about today is the Wellness Valley that we created. We created an ecosystem in our region, in Romagna, in Italy, where we put together all the stakeholders of the region to promote wellness lifestyle to all the people, but one step at a time. So Technogym is the leading company in the fitness and wellness sector. So of course we produce fitness tools and smart equipment for the fitness centers, for hotels, for corporation, for athletes of course, but for all of us. But the true message of Technogym is to create a wellness lifestyle to all of us. And for us, wellness means regular physical activity, healthy nutrition, and positive mental approach. So these are the three pillars that Technogym is based on since the origins. The company is about 35 years old. It was built in 1983. So it's still quite young, and it was built in Italy, of course, and is still developing globally with 15 branches and 90 distributors around the world. This is the wellness pyramid that we use to communicate our ethical approach to the world. So basically, at the bottom of everything is, of course, the mental approach. So you need to be relaxed, so fight the stress, have a good positive attitude with your family, take care of your social environment, be happy with your physical activity, with the sports you like to practice. And of course, going to the top, the movement and the nutrition goes alone. So of course, the more you move, of course, the more nutrition you need, your body needs, and actually the more nutrition you can actually enjoy as well, of course, because anyway, if you're more active, then you can eat more, maybe take some glass of wine in case you like some wine. So you can also spoil yourself. It depends on the level of athlete that you are as well. So what is Technogym Challenge? Get the world back on the move. So this is what we were born for. So make sure that people don't get lazy. People are back on their track, on their feet to move, not just as an athlete, but as a person that needs to take care of their well-being. And I'm going to use a slide that is similar to what our professor used as well. So this is something that is really impactful. It was on the front page of The Economist. So basically, 1,000 years ago, our body was made to move. And 1,000 years ago, we were walking 30 kilometers a day to go find our food, to go bring our food to the family. But now unfortunately, we only walk less than a kilometer a day. And this is the shape of what we're going to. So this is the shape of the body that we're moving forward to. And this is what we need to fight now, because it's already quite late. So we need to really take care of our social environment where we live in. So of course, the obesity and non-communicable diseases is such a big, impactful problem for all of us, for government especially, because anyway, it's a costly and demanding thing to fight. So everywhere in the world, especially in North America, as you can see, in the Middle East, which they have a lot of issue in regards of obesity, because anyway, people are very sedentary, so they don't move as much as they should. This is a big issue globally. So this is something that we really need to take care of. And this is a Technogym and its wellness approach system to fight these issues globally. I'm going to give you some data. Then, of course, I have also quite a long video, so I will not stay too long on stage. Non-communication diseases are 70% of the total global death. So approximately 56 million people every year die due to NCDs issues. Some of them have cardiovascular disease, and here are some data. Now, of course, cancer as well, 22% of them. Chronic respiratory issues, physical inactivity, diabetes, which is also a big issue, which is growing significantly in the States, in the Middle East, and also in the Asia nowadays is growing a lot. And what we're trying to promote, what we're trying to push in the communities is that we need to prevent these issues through exercise, because we believe exercise is medicine. So exercise is something that can prevent and can support all of us in terms of taking care of our body and avoid these kind of issues. So just an example, if you take 3 sessions a week of 50 minutes each, you have 44% minus risk of chronic diseases, minus 50% risk of type 2 diabetes, minus 34% of a stroke, minus 37% risk of breast cancers, minus 38% risk of cancer, minus 40% of risk of Alzheimer. And all these data are through the World Health Organization. So it's not something that we just provide, of course. It's something that is concrete, something that is valid. And of course, as well, minus 50% of risk of chronic respiratory issues. And we are all paying the price for the direction our world is not moving to. because anyway, this is a strong economical impact on ourselves as well. So our cities, our regions, our governments, some data as well here. $47 trillion of cumulative loss due to NCDs in 2 decades. 139 per capita loss every year in developing countries due to NCDs. 863 billion a year in 2005 of global cost for cardiovascular disease. Over 1,000 billion a year estimated cost global for cardiovascular disease treatment in 2030. 500 billion a year, US dollars a year, global cost for diabetes treatment. 745 billion a year estimated cost for diabetes treatment in 2030. And 290 billion a year for global cost for cancer treatment. Now, I know it's a lot of data, a lot of figures, but this is just to put in front of your face what we are all paying for. Because anyway, this is also money out of our pocket as well at the end. It's taxes, it's costs that we will pay every year, and it's increasing. So now we need to take care of this issue right now, is to provide us, to allow us to terminate this increase of cost for the government and for the corporation as well. So the benefits of the wellness lifestyle, it goes to all of us. So for the people, of course, for a better quality of life thanks to the prevention of chronic disease. For corporations as well, who benefit because an increase of productivity is thanks to the healthier and more creative employees in as the workforce. And of course for government, as I was saying before, because anyway it's a significant saving in healthcare's budgets. All of these activities for Technogym are taken care by the Wellness Foundation. The Wellness Foundation is a third party of the company owned by our president and founder of Technogym, which drove actually this activity in our region, which is called the Wellness Valley region. So basically what we have done, we have put together around 250 stakeholders of the region, which include hotels, corporations, universities, schools, fitness centers, of course, to promote wellness on the go, wellness activities in parks, taking kids to the school, but not leaving them with the school buses in front of the schools, leaving them maybe 800 meters away with volunteers that then walk them to school. So at least they could walk 1.5 kilometers per day instead of just going out of the buses and sit on the chair in the school and then don't do nothing all day long. So this is the kind of activities that we are involved in our communities, and many more, as you will see shortly in the video. This is our region, Romagna, and this is all the cities that are involved in our program, in our system. And this is our Technogym Village, the first wellness campus in the world, and Technogym headquarters, of course. But now I'll leave you to a video that will explain maybe even better, even deeper, what we are moving forward to.
Over the last 10 years, thanks to the commitment shown by the Wellness Foundation, the Wellness Valley project kicks off as the first wellness district involving the social and intellectual resources of a specific territory. The idea is an authentic laboratory experience designed to create a wellness ecosystem by involving all the local key players in order to leverage Romagna's intrinsic value, sheer quality of life. The Wellness Valley project is launched in 2002 when Nerio Alessandri, during an interview with a local daily newspaper, calls upon all the stakeholders in the surrounding area to join forces and leverage the many excellences of the region to bring out the best of Romagna. Today, the Wellness Valley project involves over 250 public and private stakeholders, working together in tangible projects that involves a population of 1.1 million residents and over 20 million visitors every year. In 10 years, the Wellness Valley, together with the Wellness Foundation, has created and organized over 60 different best practices, initiatives which take place year after year throughout the region to help improve the health and well-being of all generations. At the center of the Wellness Valley stands the Techno Gym Village, the first wellness campus in the world, opened in 2012 during the 20th Wellness Congress with the presence of President Bill Clinton. The Techno Gym Village is not only the headquarters of the world's leading company for fitness and wellness solutions, but also the hub of the Wellness Valley project. A physical place where the culture of wellness and quality of life is developed and spread all around the world. Piedibus is designed to encourage primary school children to enjoy walking safely through the town. An active way of keeping over 1,000 children off the buses and onto their feet. Jogger Wellness involves 14,000 children between 3 and 9 years old, their parents and their school teachers. Aimed at drastically reducing the increase in obesity among infant population, this initiative teaches children the values of physical exercise with a good dose of fun. Every spring, over 50,000 people enjoy the benefits of an active lifestyle thanks to Parks in Wellness, a full program of free physical activity led by professional trainers that takes place in public parks thanks to the cooperation between Wellness Foundation, local public administrations and the fitness centers of the different cities. Together with Romagna's Oncological Scientific Research Institute, one of Europe's frontline centers for the fight against cancer, the Wellness Foundation is conducting an innovative project to prevent the insurgence of tumors. Wellness Foundation has developed a dedicated selection system for hotels, resorts, beaches, events and the tourism industry that wants to specialize in wellness. From March 2016, the new regional law of Emilia-Romagna on the touristic system has appointed Wellness Valley as the unique brand for territorial promotion. Every spring, at the end of May, Wellness Foundation promotes the Wellness Week, a calendar of events, initiatives and programs involving all the territory and its stakeholders for the promotion of regular exercise, healthy nutrition and the culture of quality of life. Over 400,000 people enjoy every spring the activities of the Wellness Week. An initiative involving practitioners from the region has led to an agreement between the Wellness Foundation and doctors promoting exercise as medicine. From now on, physical activity will be prescribed as the principal drug in the fight against chronic diseases. In 2016, the World Economic Forum of Davos has adapted Wellness Valley as the case study and the international benchmark to show how an ecosystem of health and wellness should look like, and how it is possible to create a social, cultural and economic environment promoting and stimulating the adoption of healthy lifestyle with huge benefits for people, companies and governments. The Wellness Valley project demonstrates time after time the beneficial effects of a wellness ecosystem as a viable method of prevention in the face of an increasing frequency of chronic diseases. The Wellness Valley is the real-life laboratory experience which demonstrates how we can create an ecosystem which encourages a healthy lifestyle that can be reproduced across the world.
Sorry, I think I took a little bit too long in my time. Just to conclude, just to give you the figures that I want to make sure that they will remain into your mind. So thanks to all the activities that we have done in the last 20 years, so it took a lot of work, the people living in the Wellness Valley, in the Romagna region, are 10% more active compared to the rest of the Italian regions. Plus 92% of active children compared to the rest of Italy. 10,000 students involved in degrees on wellness. over 2,000 corporations on healthy nutrition, organic food, active lifestyle, wellness, and sport. More than 8,000 direct employees into this industry. 30 startups on wellness raised in the last 5 years. 1.5 million business visitors every year for events related to business, to wellness, excuse me. And important data as well. Over 200 million euros of income for the local tourism thanks to the events organized in the region. And last but not least, we don't have accurate figures, so we cannot actually give it to you, but the saving for healthcare system for the region is quite significant. So this is the key point that I want to leave you with. And think of the small region we live in and think of replicate this into the world. So into other cities, into other regions, into other states, into other countries. Think of the impact that the wellness lifestyle, the wellness system could give back to the people. Thank you so much.
Take a seat. Matteo, a very convincing case. Do take a seat. Can I call up the panel, my panel again, please, as we'll crack straight on to the next stage. Catherine, come join us. Sarah. If you'd like to take a seat down there. Lovely, thanks.
May I enjoy you?
Hurrah, excellent. Oleg,
Yes,
good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I didn't see you at the back of the room.
There's too many people, that's why you don't see me.
Well, thanks very much indeed, panel, for joining us. And as we have effectively two newcomers to the other three you know already, let me quickly introduce Oleg Matitsin, who's the president of the International University Sports Federation, FISU, and with me here, a special welcome to Catherine Carty, who is UNESCO's Chair Project Manager at the Institute of Technology in Tralee. So thank you very much again. The message is sport has a key role to play in the promotion of global health. And just to start with, I want to ask this of you, because Sarah, you said that your sport had a responsibility, not just a role, but a responsibility. And I just want to take that as a starting point. Yanis, perhaps you could start us off on that. Do you see it as a responsibility and a duty of sport to take on that global health role, or just an opportunity? I mean, because it does put a big onus on sport if it is a responsibility.
Yes, I think it is a responsibility, and what I try to also demonstrate is that...
Yanis, turn your mic on.
Sorry?
All right, hold on. We'll get you a handheld. Sorry. Good point. You were up on the podium.
You can start maybe.
Sarah, it was your phrase, responsibility.
Absolutely. It's part of the whole overall program of what we do. We have been entrusted with the welfare of a sport as such, and it means that we need to maximize its capacity, maximize what that sport can do. And the profile that it has is a fantastic, the other word you used, opportunity, but frankly, what other opportunities are there out there? And therefore, when we see that it is a global problem, it's an issue that is very much part of the whole social framework that exists in society, and it's probably one of the most important platforms in order to be able to promote the importance of health. Therefore, we have that responsibility, amongst many other responsibilities, of what we do with our sports and our activities, and that's what we're dedicated to do.
Okay, I mean, I asked that, Yanis, partly on the basis of what you showed us and the issue regarding obesity and inactivity. That's not sport's fault, far from it. So that's why I sort of wonder if it should feel a sense of responsibility or not.
Sure, it's not sport's fault per se, but as I try to indicate, it's to their advantage, or it's to the advantage of the sport or the sports federations, that active, healthy, fit young individuals means that the coaches don't have to spend the first 2 or 3 years bringing them up to normal fitness before they can start developing fitness for the sport. And that's really the problem we have, and And until we actually deal with that issue, you'll find that in various different sports, shortcuts have to happen to try and get the very best coming through, because we've neglected simple things like having agility, jumping, doing things that normally we are designed to do that we no longer do.
Oleg, of course, if we're talking about university sports, we know there are many students who go to university for sport, in fact, but we also know there are probably more people who, from 16, have given up on sport and physical activity already. So what is, for you, where is the balance?
First, I would propose to put this discussion only also for plenary session when all federations presenting, because the value of health, I think it should be also not only responsibility, it was the mission for sport, not for only IOC as a global family, but for all federations, because we're not talking about the physical health, we're talking about this mental, social, and of course physical health itself. Because again, what we are doing, we try to educate through sport. All our federation, doesn't matter, ski federation or swimming or university, and we try to educate our young people, new generation, how to play fair and how to be healthy, first more moral health, social health, and then to active as a really part of the society. So I believe, of course, in university, in our federation, we now try to implement healthy campus program for universities, and I appreciate very much your, not initiative, your activity in Italy and around the world, because as much as we can, we should involve the students, because it's future leaders of our society. They should have not only the be educated, they should bring and promote values of the healthy society, I should say. So in Federation, we try to implement, and now we are creating the program, FISU Ambassadors program, and one part of this program is how to educate, how to build a healthy life for students during their years when they are students in university. It's not only about the healthy food, healthy activity, it's also how to find the balance between the research, education, and physical activity. So I believe, of course, for us, for our organization, is a mission. It's not only one part of our responsibilities.
Much more than a responsibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Catherine, the reason I've asked about this responsibility is because you can hear there a level of commitment, certainly at least coming from two federations, and I would vouch for a few others at least who would argue in the same way. But the UN's view on sport and its role in global health is quite a complex one, isn't it? And it's, some would say, even a little disappointing from the sports side of the fence that it doesn't perhaps recognize sport as being as valuable, potentially, a contributor as it should.
Okay. So, yeah, potentially. Well, UNESCO is the UN agency with responsibility for sport, and UNESCO takes the sport agenda very seriously and very much connects it with the health agenda. Periodically, UNESCO bring together the world's sport ministers, and that happened last July in Kazan in the Russian Federation. And they produced the Kazan action plan following on from that gathering of world ministers. And there were 120 plus countries represented at that event. And in November of last year, those ministers, or the countries represented, and the countries represented through UNESCO, agreed to implement the Kazan action plan. And that involves creating access and investment to universal access for all to sport, physical education, physical activity. So that's a very positive move. I think what you're referring to primarily is the Sustainable Development Agenda, where sport features in the preamble and kind of gets dropped off in the targets and indicators, or the goals and targets that are expanded on within the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. However, the Kazan action plan that I referred to connects very much with the Sustainable Development Agenda across 10 or 11 of the goals identified within the Sustainable Development Agenda, and really shows how sport can be used in health, in sport, in education, in developing inclusive cities, across many of the goals there. So sport, it was disappointing to UNESCO that sport didn't feature more, but very much the work that UNESCO has been driving since last year, the Kazan Action Plan, and since the Sustainable Development Agenda emerged in 2015, those elements have been connected, and a huge amount of work activity is going forward now to really show that connection and show the power of sport into that health agenda for everybody, and also into the education agenda, where quality physical education is seen as a very important starting point for lifelong engagement in sport and physical activity. I think one of the key dilemmas here also is the maybe disconnect in many people's eyes between health and sport, and actually both definitions contain physical, mental and social well-being as a key component. And Olympism was mentioned earlier, and I think the body, mind and will dimension connects very nicely into that as well. So these elements are intrinsically linked, and I think it's up to us to invest in them, to enable them both to achieve their full potential.
Part of that disconnect, perhaps, is something I might ask Sarah and Oleg about, is particularly at the higher level, the bigger events, some of the sponsors are not the sponsors that would naturally be associated with healthy living styles. And are we now at a point that has to change?
Difficult question.
Clearly,
It is.
and that's why I'm giving you time to think about it.
It is on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's also important that there are companies who are potentially not necessarily associated their product itself with healthy living, but they're ready to actually invest in activities that are promoting that and that are developing that. And in fact, there are really important evolutions taking place within that wider part of commercial sponsorship and commercial support. We've been having very intense discussions now with the main sponsor of a lot of alpine skiing activities, which is a motorcar brand. As a BBC man, you don't talk about brands, but I think here at SportAccord we have no problem in mentioning that this is Audi, and they have now an important launch of their electronic vehicles, and very much connected with our major events. Now this is basically going down another avenue, but it's still nevertheless very much connected with a healthier existence as such as well. So the welfare and so on and so forth. And certainly where there are ways we can promote it, we very much do. And yeah, sponsors who are ready to invest in activities that are going to encourage healthy living and welfare, there's no need to push them away.
Okay, Oleg?
Yeah, I would say yes, because now, especially in our federation, we are making a relation with universities, with students. So it means we try to play fair, and we build our policy only with clean, I can say, clean partners, and which promote or produce all products only for healthy style. And of course, we invite the sponsors, because we are not focusing only how to support our events. We're also thinking about how to create a network among universities. It means how to build a new researches among universities, and focusing on not only the sports area, but also and mainly for health area. So my answer, yes.
Okay, and maybe, Yanis, it's fairer not to ask IFs in that regard. And what do you think? I mean, if ultimately they are supporting projects which are supporting a healthier lifestyle?
As we've been saying, it's a very difficult question, but my view is that the federations need to be supported. And if that means coming from companies that may not be having products that are necessarily the most healthy ones, I think, it needs to be done. But I would like to come back to the question you asked my colleague just now, for example, in terms of the World Health Organization and so on. I think they've missed something that's really important. It comes back to what we can learn from evolutionary biology. We are inherently lazy. That is our design. We had to be, and there were some nice, interesting experiments in fruit flies. If you put a small amount of food in a jar, and you have a small number of flies, and you get different types of fruit flies. Those with a small amount of food, the ones that survive are the lazy ones. The ones that actually move around a lot die. So we are designed to be conservative, to protect ourselves. So trying to motivate the public to be active is very, it goes against our design. Sport is one way to overcome that, because you're not motivating someone to become active, to do the sport. In the process, you're active. So I think that is what we're going to think about. We can really learn from evolutionary biology and to tap into that. And that's what typically happens when we reach 40 or midlife crisis, we start exercising. But what we really need to go is right back to school age, the universities. What happens when we go to university? Physical activity goes down dramatically. Fatness goes up. All the cardiovascular diseases step in when we go to university. So I think.
So hold on, yes, which is a point which is recognised. But then, how do you either hold on to or re-educate people when, as Sarah said, once you're over the age of 14, you don't go and do maybe you never go on the slopes, for example. So how do you bridge that gap?
But it goes back to the point that I'm maybe not making very clear, is that we can't only have a situation of putting carrots out there. We actually also need to have a stick. And that sounds incredibly tough. But you know, we need to go back to the times where through the schooling process, you have to do exercise of some sort, rather than become an optional thing. And I think as we move forward, I'm pretty confident in the next 10 years or so, you're going to have, and it's happening in certain places around the world, where you have real incentives to be active, like, you know, your supermarket bill goes down, your insurance premium goes down. There have to be those kind of, not only carrots, but sticks as well to change what we do, because we're inherently lazy.
How can university sport opt into that sort of idea?
Unfortunately, I should say that the problem exists because it's too late to start to educate the people when they come into university. It's too late, even to school. So I would prefer start from the families. So it should be the family responsibility to educate the kids from the beginning, from the first month when they just born. Of course, we can discuss about the family values today in the society, of course. But anyway, even of course, the 18 or 17 people coming to university, and again, if universities have no venues, have no obligation, have no educational program where sport is a part. So, of course, it's not easy for federations, for any organization, even UNESCO, to really change dramatically the situation. So it should be first, it should be the common responsibilities, as many umbrellas we have in this team. It would be more stronger, our team, the first. Second, it should be the state program and address our message to the state, to politicians, because the health and sport is not only the tool how we can, sorry for saying, manipulate the people, how can we make influence on the people. It's a really very efficient tool how to build a healthy society. And starting from the school program, universities program, and again, it should be not only the options. I can or I can't. It should be the really, when we come into university, the school, minimum hours for physical activity during the years when you are in university or in the school.
Yeah.
If I may also now, something that we need to fight is technology as well, of course. Because anyway, at a young age, I'm still relatively young, I believe, but when I was younger, maybe we didn't have all the technology we have right now. So what my mother would tell me is in Italy we have churches with football fields besides, and that's where I used to go until I was 14, 15. But nowadays parents especially, to avoid any issue with their own kids, they just give the PlayStation, they give the iPhone to make sure that they're quiet. The kids, also my sister with my nieces as well, that she does the same. At dinner, she just give the iPhone to play and to relax instead of going outside and maybe play around with them as well. Just because, as you were saying as well, we became also more lazy. So we need to change the mentality and the attitude and fight also this big issue, which is technology, which is of course helping us in other ways, but I anticipated, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's where, Yanis, you were going to jump in there.
I was going to jump in because I was sitting now listening to the talks, and my smartwatch, which I won't mention which company it is because we've helped design an app that makes us be able to measure real-time physiological responses, was telling me, and I was showing Tekla, my watch is telling me, get up and move. You've been sitting for 1 hour. So, you know, if you have this kind of technology, it can also help you. you know, incentivize you, and also link it all to your GP, link it to the hospitals, link it to your trainers, and saying, actually, this week I've seen that you haven't done what you're meant to be doing, okay? So why aren't you doing it? You know, we can't just leave it up to the individual, and I certainly don't believe we can leave it up to the families. You know, we have to orchestrate this. Obviously, I sound almost like a dictator, and I don't mean to be in any way. But if we leave it up to ourselves, and my friend Matteo said, we've become lazy. No, we haven't. We are designed to be lazy, because there was a good reason for that.
Catherine?
I think broad systemic changes are needed to address this issue, really, and to reverse it. And in a certain extent, we need to go back to the future, go back to the original definitions, pare back a bit of the advances that have got us into the situation we are now, and reinvent from this point. And I think the Sustainable Development Agenda that you mentioned gives a really good platform for that reinvention, because there are things in this that are, as I said, systemic. So it's across the health system, which has become an illness management system, and get that to broaden out its perspective and recognise the role of physical activity and physical education and a whole realm of other interventions in that regard. Broaden out the education system again to allow to get rid of this optional notion that people can do this and do this, and it's very easy to opt out of anything around being physically active, and create something that will develop the well-being and wellness characteristics that we want to see, traits develop throughout children's lifetime that will extend into adulthood. So we've made a lot of retrograde steps, and I think it's across the new urban agenda, urban habitat, smart cities, the Kazan action plan, and a whole range of initiatives that collectively can come together to help us see the changes that we want to see. And just one further point, everybody has recognized how valuable physical activity and sport is in terms of addressing this health agenda. In the case of people with disabilities, we know that they are 3 times less active than everybody else, and in the case of children with disabilities, 4.5 times less active than the general population. And in terms of the impact on secondary health conditions for that, economically, not to mind socially and physically, and for quality of life of individuals, that has a huge impact.
And that's not just physical disabilities, that's intellectual disabilities, that's the disability of where you might live, the any exclusion factor.
Yeah, it's anything. And actually, what's needed is universal design as we systematically change things. I think now, the systems that are around today, for the most part, were not developed by professionals who emerged into their profession with a knowledge of universal design. And now, what we have the opportunity to do, I think, is reshape our education programs in universities, in colleges, to ensure that we have an emergence of graduates, whether it's in engineering, urban design, urban planning, sport, wellness, who know about universal design and who create a society that will enable everybody to participate and to be active.
And some of those coming out of Matteo's project, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sarah?
Following on from Yanez's comments about sticks and carrots, for those of you here who live in Switzerland, the insurance products, they are very much contributing actually to incentivizing exercise, and let's say they charge enough money for it, but in any case it's for the right reasons. And for example, the product that I use, you have 50% of your gym membership covered. And in fact, they've introduced a recent new bonus scheme whereby you put in your, you have to complete a questionnaire at the end of your year, and based on your results, and you're also linked to your phone, your tracker, in terms of how much you move and so on and so forth, you can obtain a discount then on your annual premium, you know, and these sort of things are great incentives.
And this is the way that you need to use technology for. Yeah. And of course, the insurers are doing this not just because they are happy to do it, but because they know that they will save money as well.
Yeah.
Because anyway, they will not pay for your medical support when you will grow, when you will have issues.
Good health is good business.
So this is a very key point that you touched.
It's very good.
Yeah. Let me just ask, I just want, before, I'm going to see if there are any views to be had in the hall as well. And we've covered a certain area about sports responsibility or role for global health. Sarah, you gave an example of how your sport is getting more people into your sport, essentially, which is great. Do you feel as driven to get people physically active any old how as to get more people into sport. Because there is a difference between sport and physical activity, and obviously you would sooner have people getting into your sport.
Priority for us, of course, and where we're focusing is to get kids onto the snow, clearly. But in terms of the bigger picture, of course, getting kids doing sport, people doing sport, that's yeah.
I mean, I ask it partly because sport is such a fantastic medium, isn't it? It's got such a strong message to put out there. But at the same time, we know half of this planet don't like competition very much. They don't like organised sporting events. They've got a horrible memory or history of how it worked for them when they were youngest. And Yanis, that was partly the premise of my question.
But I think as well that I think more can be done is, for example, with the Olympic cities. You know, I think when the cities are bidding for the games, the kind of health legacy should be on the top of the agenda. Not somewhere there and then is it actually evaluated afterwards. You know, it should be part of the bid so that it's actually demonstrated what they're going to do, and then they have to follow up. What did you do? You know, rather than being a case in a case, you say wonderful things, you get the games, and then nothing happens. You know, and I think there's a real opportunity because if you, and as I mentioned before, most of the world are going to be living in these horrendous concrete buildings in 100 years' time. Imagine what it's going to be like. So I think it's a responsibility, and I would like to see the Olympic movement in particular taking a leadership role with maybe the World Health Organization, having these cities that are being celebrated, and also going backwards, the Olympic cities of the past. This year we have Mexico City, the 50th anniversary since the Mexico Olympics that we saw in Tekla's presentation. We should go back and help those cities, help the future cities. And I think then we can start talking about real impact and measure it. We can use data and technology to measure what is happening. You presented some data comparing your area to the rest of Italy. But from my data presented from our European assessment, Italy is at the bottom of physical activity in Europe. So if you've got a 10% increase from almost zero, that's not really great. So what I'm trying to say is, I'm not picking on Italy in any way, but I'm just trying to say that we need concrete data to guide what we should do.
Catherine.
David, if I could just quickly directly connect to that this is absolutely one of the very clear stated goals of Beijing 2022. This is the motivation for empower or making 300 million new winter sport participants active in winter sports. One of the key points, the three key points, is for the health and welfare and to take a step in the right direction of the population. That the government is very, very conscious of the deterioration, the significant deterioration in the health of the population. They've unfortunately adopted a Western diet and 24-hour takeaways, and they don't eat healthily like they used to, and certainly don't move. And this is one of the clear stated goals. So that connects directly to what you're saying and to the Olympics.
They picked up the baton.
And I want to thank Yanis for the assist because Mr. Bach himself came to our technology village in June last year to meet us, of course, as a partner of the Olympic Games, because as I said before, we've been partnered with the Olympic Games since the last 7 editions. But he came to us to see the Wellness Valley, so what we have done in our region. And straight afterwards, he introduced to us immediately to the legacy team of IOC. And I came last week from Tokyo, where we actually presented this project for Tokyo 2020. Yeah. So this is on top of their agenda, for your information. But not only Tokyo 2020 and the future one.
Okay, it's happening.
Actually, they have and they will introduce to us all the former cities that hosted Olympic Games to introduce this system.
Okay.
So Mr. Bach himself came to visit us and is keen to promote these activities.
Catherine.
Okay, just in terms of the engagement of people within the sport, I think it's important, the wider you build your base, the higher the chances that more people are going to stick with it and get to the elite sport level. But in terms of the grassroots level, I think get as many people as you can to participate, because we don't know who's going to rise to the top. Talent identification is not that early. And allow for more shifting of people across different sports, experimentation in different sports, and they'll finally, you know, if it's a case of looking for Olympic Olympic performance and whatever else, those people will find their way to the top. It's keeping the majority engaged in some sport and allowing them to transition between sports as much as they can. On the cities issue, I think this is a really important concept. We know that the majority of the world's population, 70%, are shortly going to be living in cities. Global Active Cities is an initiative, an ISO-related standard that was launched last year, IOC supported standard, and it's been supported by Evalio in Switzerland. And this standard is for municipalities, local authorities within the city to apply for. It takes around 2 years for a city to show what they're doing to enable their citizens be active. And this is across schools, fitness facilities, leisure clubs, across all areas, sports federations within the city, and for all citizens, whomever they may be. So I think that standard was developed originally as a legacy project with IOC. It's now was then seen as also something that could be a pregacy standard. So for cities who intend applying for a major sporting event, now it's just seen as one that cities should adopt because it's the right thing for cities to do. And it enables them to package all their offers, identify their strengths, the gaps that they need to maybe address. And I think the example of Technogym is absolutely excellent. And the research evidence that you've compiled as well is something that needs to be heard broadly. You know, and it's a really good example of what can be done in a short space of time with the systemic changes that you've managed to make in that region.
Yeah. Well, I think the message that's been absolutely clear from this afternoon is that this is an ever more urgent issue, and measures are being picked up and taken. It's a long route, a long road ahead, but there are certain signs of positivity there. Once again, thank you very much indeed for your contributions to our discussion, for our panel debate. Ladies and gentlemen, the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And could I now just ask Fabio Pigozzi, our co-chair, to conclude this part of the session. Fabio.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, let me thank my co-chair, Dr. Monjoy, and also John Hewitt and Holly Norton from the SportAccord organization for the excellent cooperation in finalizing this first health accord. You know, my role as co-chair is to consolidate what has been said by the other speakers, but also to add few messages moving forward of my own. Here is in this slide the structure of what I will cover in my 10 minutes. And in order not to repeat what others have said, I plan to stress very much 3 areas that have to date been underutilized as vehicles of change: the impact of Olympic sport, the impact of elite sport, and of course, the impact of university. Also the impact of school has been already pointed out by Sarah in his lecture. So we all are aware of the key role of sports in the promotion of global health. But I would like, before going into the areas I mentioned, to stress a concept. Still, we have physical inactivity as one of the main reasons of death. These are data from the World Health Organization. 70% of all deaths in 3 years' time will be a consequence of a wrong lifestyle. Not only physical activity, of course, but also tobacco use, alcohol, overweight, and obesity. I also would like to say that physical inactivity is leading to a very well-known syndrome, the sedentary death syndrome. These are disorders related to a sedentary lifestyle determining an increase in mortality. As pointed out already by Matteo, we have many conditions that are caused or worsened by sedentary lifestyle, most of the pathologies, including cancer. And in many kind of cancers, we have an important role of prevention represented by physical activity. So the question mark at this stage is how to move forward. How to enhance physical activity, which is, as you are aware, a global question which has been also promoted by the World Health Organization, which launched many years ago a global strategy on diet, physical activity, and health. I would like to say that the positive effect of exercise has been known since a long time, since ancient times, I would say. Reading these quotes from Hippocrates, today we have to remind that very little we have progressed in this field, and we have not listened to these sound advices. So I would like now to stress my first take-home message, the impact of the Olympic sport. We have, unfortunately, as it has been already pointed out during the round table, we have to admit that there is little evidence that international elite sporting events such as the Olympics leads to increased participation in physical or sporting activities at the population health level. So it is needed a legacy. I am aware that there are programs addressed to this very important goal, but so far we have no data which shows that major events leads to an increase physical activity of the population hosting these events. There is a very considerable amount of work, I can say, in this area, and almost all of this work points out that the Olympic health legacy requires pre-planning and evidence-based post-appraisal focus on active cities, which has been also pointed out by the speakers during this session. Now, let's go to another important area, which is really part of the strategies, how to improve physical activity and how to improve health of the general population. It is well known that elite sport can have major positive effect on morbidity and mortality. I have been selective here given the time constraints, but many studies clearly show that there is a better outcome for the previously elite athletes in terms of mortality. When compared in this work to other population, as for example, actors or clerical people, we have, of course, we have assumed to have a lower levels of physical activity. We can therefore state that there is really an impact which has been shown, a positive impact which has been shown by many other studies. This is another study which support the previous conclusions. The study investigated all causes and disease-specific mortality in male former elite athlete. It's very important, more than 50 years, so half a century follow-up, so is really important, and this study found a better outcome in terms of mortality due to a lower risk of heart attack or stroke in elite athletes. This study also supports the same message, which former athlete, particular in aerobic sport, they use hospital service less. So we have a link between physical activity and social cost of pathology. And this is a concept already stressed previously, but I would like again to show scientific data related to this aspect. I would like also to give now the second take-home message, the impact of elite sport. Elite sport is associated with significant health gains, morbidity and mortality. And now I would like to stress the last area I will talk about in my presentation, which has been already stressed by Oleg during the roundtable. The impact of a university. I am a university rector. My university is the only state sports university in Italy, one of the few in Europe. It is located, as you can see, in a very well-known area of Rome, close to the Olympic Stadium. You know, I would like to say that once again, the data are quite clear. We have data, as I said, that the transition from school to university college is typically associated with weight gain. Here we have many examples of studies which show that when people start university, they gain weight, and this is reaffirmed by many other studies. This is a very important journal, the Nutrition Journal, which shows the gaining of significant amount of weight during the first semester of college. Of course, this leads to a necessity, to a need to implement education or other strategy to counteract this aspect. And many other studies testify what I have said, but I would like also to say that, interestingly, there are some populations which are not affected as the general population of university students, are those who are engaged in sports science. This is a study concerned to the mortality of sports science graduates in Estonia for a long time, about 30 years, which clearly shows that university education in sports science is characterized by reduced mortality both among men and women. This means that if you link university studies with physical activity, and this has to be, of course, organized, you lead to a better health for our students. So this third take-home message is that university is associated with significant weight gain, particularly in the transition from school to college, and this is an opportunity for health promotion. We have to say that knowledge of sport, exercise science, and medicine seems to impact positively on health-related fitness. So, I am close to the finishing line of my presentation. And of course, I like to summarize some take-home messages, not only from my side, but from all the speakers of the session I chaired. First of all, Olympic health legacy requires better pre-planning and evidence-based post-appraisal, focus on active cities, as pointed out by Yannis. Elite sport associated with significant health gains, morbidity and mortality. So sport promotion is fundamental. University is associated, when we have the transition from school to college, with significant weight gain, an opportunity for health promotion. And that knowledge of sport, exercise science, and medicine seems to impact positively on health-related fitness. So the really importance of educational aspect. So we can say that to make our planet healthier, we need to invest in the promotion of physical activity, because this is not only related to the perspective of life, but to the perspective of a good life until the end of our days. So we can say that the goal is to die young as late in life as possible. But what is the state of the art now, the reality? The reality is, unfortunately, for many people, to die short after mid of life, but biological old as a result of chronic disease, the so-called sedentary death syndrome. So I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Fabio, very much indeed, and for all your work in putting that whole section together. And again, to Margot for all your efforts to bring the first half of the session together, and what we get is obviously a whole. Changing behaviour is desperately difficult. We're at a starting point in many ways, and I think you all know that better than I do. But this first health accord is another step towards that goal. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you for being with us throughout the SportAccord conference as well. And whenever it is you're going home, have a safe trip home. Thank you very much.